when we take a step back now, we go right back to the 27th of November, 2007, Joe, Shangri-La Hotel, you ordered room service and you got a knock on the door. Talk us through the preceding moments, mate.
Um, so I'll give you a little backstory. So my mom's an opera singer. So she came to Australia as an international student on a scholarship to the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. And even though we grew up in very marginalized communities, so mom was single mother, working 2 jobs, studying full time for a master's. So she hardly had any time to look after me. But when she did, she used to always take me to the opera house to watch opera. So I was the only kid in the hood that could listen to opera and tell you the difference between a clarinet and an oboe, right? So a little bit of a backdrop, but years later, obviously, like my mom living that lifestyle, being an opera singer might look very like grand or whatever, but the reality was we were doing it tough, So I ended up getting into crime, and at the age of 21, just a month after my 21st birthday, I did a massive drug deal at the executive suite at the Shangri-La in the morning. So I still had close to about $30,000 cash. I think it could have been more, but it was on the coffee table, and I ordered room service because I was feeling hungry. I ordered a big breakfast and orange juice and a long black, and I knew room service coming up, so I put a bed sheet over the coffee table, like over the cash. And then I get a knock on the door, and I'm thinking that it's room service, and then literally the door busts open, and you see all these guys wearing balaclavas with machine guns coming in, and the first thought was, this isn't my breakfast order. And the second thought was, shit, I'm getting robbed, because that's what happens in the game. There's a lot of times you do a drug deal and they set you up to get robbed. So I've thrown the cash everywhere on the floor thinking, they're just after the cash, not me. I want to get away with my life pretty much. And the next thing I know, I'm running beeline towards the door, and I get a machine gun to the side of the head. And literally, I'm like in a concussed state. I hear the words, "This is the police, you're under arrest." And I got hogtied on the floor. Literally I had like $100 bill stuck on my face. Everything was in slow motion. I'm looking out the floor to ceiling window of the executive suite of the Shangri-La Hotel, and I see the opera house. And literally memories of my childhood come flooding back, of how I've taken everything for granted in my life up to that point. And that was literally the last view of freedom before getting sentenced to 13 years at the age of 21.
Fucking, it must be like when we look at movies and we see like these hardened criminals and they've been doing drug dealing for years, or they've been running these drug cartels, and like you were just new to it. You were just trying to help your family almost because you were struggling. And in that moment, when you see these guys bust in the door, it would have been like, I can't imagine how that felt within your body, like the amount of adrenaline. Like you say time stopped and you're looking at the Harbour Bridge, but you must have been having a massive amount of stress.
Oh man, it's obviously that any moment of getting, I don't know what you felt, Andrew, when you were getting arrested, but it's a huge shock. You don't feel like it's reality. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna get out of this. So I'll probably get bailed out. We can work this out. And I think that's what goes through everyone's mind. Or we're gonna get bailed out. We're gonna work. We're gonna, you're always thinking about the most positive scenario. Yeah. Yeah. But the reality is, like, you're gonna pay for the crime that you've done. And like you mentioned, a lot of these individuals, including myself, who get into crime, don't initially get into crime because they love crime. It's a byfactor of, a lot of disadvantage that they grew up in. It's the environments that they grow up in. It's not always a choice to want to get into crime. It's because there's no other supporting factors. There's no other supporting positive factors that lead you to do something better. It's only later on when you realize, oh crap, there's more to life than this. That's when a lot of people make the change. But to be honest with you, for a lot of people that are still currently in crime, doing crime or in jail, I'll be honest, it's ignorance of the fact that there's more positive things out there. And even if they know that there are positive things that are out there, it's a lack of self-worth and self-belief that they can do it. They go, well, I can't do that. I don't have the education. It's that kind of limiting mindset that holds a lot of people back as well.
And at this stage in your life, you probably thought everything was coming to a close, everything was ending. But in fact, like many of the guests we've had on the podcast, this, I guess, adversity was just the beginning of the start of your life. And we'll get on to Andrew's story, and we'll tell his tale in just a moment. But I want to talk about, preceding that, before that moment. As you said, you grew up in a community where you were struggling, you and your family were struggling, but it was a community of violence and a lot of negativity. You were surrounded by crime, and it felt like your only natural path. You were expelled from every school that you attended, and crime was one of those things that was probably the only thing you knew. And at the age of 21, as we just discussed, you were arrested by police and sentenced to 13 years in prison. I understand you served 9 years of those 13, directing a criminal enterprise. Tell us more about the actual enterprise itself and what you were doing.
So
Dealing
I
drugs.
got done. So when you get sentenced for a drug syndicate, they always put you in a level. So there's various levels of that enterprise hierarchy, whether you normally take part, you're a runner, your middle management, or your top management, or your syndicate leader. I was charged as a syndicate leader. There were 9 of us that got arrested. So we were predominantly dealing with MDMA and pressing into pills. Only because for me, I was still at a young age. That's what I knew. That's what I was surrounded by. I really didn't get into any of like cocaine or ice or anything. That wasn't my environment at the time. It's different for everyone else, but that was, from a young age, I used to go to all these underage parties, and because like the people that were around me were still fairly young, that's what we knew, and that was our contacts. And it just kind of escalated, I started off doing small amounts of like petty little drug deals here and there in high school, but it just started escalating after a while.
And I think that resonates with Andrew, doesn't it? We'll talk about your story, but it kind of scaled up, and as you saw more money coming in, you kind of got a bit more greedy, a bit more, your ego kind of built as you were getting away with it. And this was something that you experienced, Joe, as you were dealing these drugs, more and more money coming in, you sort of to scale up how much you're dealing and the quantity?
To be honest with you, looking back, I go, man, only if I knew the things that I knew now, right? But, uneducated kid, I got expelled from every school. I didn't know anything else. Where else was I meant to get that amount of money? For any young person or even adults, that large amount of money, that sums of money, like it's very enticing, and that's something you've been doing since you're from a young age. It's really hard to think twice about it, because that's your norm, that's what you're used to, that's your environment, but like I said, if I had knowledge of other things, if I had positive mentors or people in my life that were educating me and telling me about like other opportunities there are and pathways to those opportunities, maybe it could have been a different situation. Maybe, and I understand that at that age, my mindset was completely different as well, but I didn't have any of those paths. Like I knew there were these things that existed, I knew there were people making legitimate money, but I just didn't know how to get there. Nor did I at the time want it, because I'm like, oh, that probably means all these education and connections, and I was like, how do I start all that? I'm comfortable with where I am right now, and that was a dangerous part. And I think a lot of people face the same thing, yeah.
And we're going to talk, as you say, Confit and the re-incarceration rates in Australia. In proportion, in context of other countries in the world, countries like Sweden, they have a very different prison system, and they have much better rates of re-incarceration. Now, one of those statistics, Andrew, mate, you went into prison, you came back out, and then you went back in. So you were one of those. Can you talk to us about your childhood and growing up, I think you sort of grew up in that Liverpool area, but what was it like for you? I think what Joe said, you grew up in quite a good family. You had a good family upbringing, but you
Just
sort of
my
faced
area,
with, a poor area
my
where there's
environment.
sort of adversity and
Yeah, so I had a very similar upbringing to Joe, even though like he was kind of like in the inner west and I was out more western Sydney. And like I came from a pretty good household. Like mum and dad looked after me, mum and dad loved me. But they were slaving away at a job for minimum wage just to get by and put me through education. And because they weren't around and I didn't have any siblings, I kind of found like my belonging amongst my group of friends that I had at school. And unfortunately, you know, in Southwest Sydney, like a lot of the group of friends, the guys are coming up from broken homes too. And that was kind of like the crowd that I was growing up with. And we were always like going to parties, getting drunk. And very similar to Joe, as we got older, like I started getting into selling pills and weed because like that's where all the contacts were. That was our social group, our social circles, and that was the market. And everyone around us was like kind of getting high off pills and weed. So I thought, all right, well, this is my opportunity to make money. And when I got arrested the first time, they were looking for pills in my house, but they found like a BB gun, like a firearm. Anyways, so I beat that charge and I got out, but I was only in prison for a week and I didn't really learn my lesson. Like I went in there, the older boys looked after me, and it was a bit of a shock on my first day because of the reception cells that you got to go through before you get into the main system. Like it was like absolutely like cockroaches all over the wall, rust in the bathroom. You don't want to take your shoes, your thongs off. It was terrible. And then you get moved into a nice clean wing and you're like, oh, this is not too bad. And then you have your boys there, like people of the same ethnicity, and they're looking after you and they're doing a good time. They're happy. They're like, got all this food. And you're like, oh, this is not too bad. I can do this. And then I got out. And then when I got out, I was introduced to other people because like when you don't snitch, people think, oh, this guy is a good criminal that like you can do business with. So you just get like more connects. Anyways, I got introduced to selling heroin. And I thought, wow, this is where the money is. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, cool. Like I'll just keep going down, cruising down this path. And it's like Joe said before, like this is all I knew from like the people that I grew up with and the area that I grew up with. And like, you know, when I was going out, I'd see like the older boys who had like all the girls and were spending all the money in the clubs. Like the only way to get to where I want to get to in life was the way that they get it, like the way they sell money, like the way they make money through selling drugs and like the amount of girls that they were getting through selling drugs. So I thought, all right, that's if I want to get to where they are at, I got to do the same thing as them. And that's all I knew. And then fast forward, I got arrested. Like, mind you, like I always thought like my way out was sell drugs, save up a lot of money, and then start a business. Because that's how I heard like everyone else was getting out of the game. Like they saved up their money, opened up a business, and then they just got out and their business was making all the money for them. And I thought that's how I was going to do it. But silly me, I was spending all my money before I even saved up any money. And then I got arrested. And then when the judge whacked, Joe said, like, you're in disbelief. You kind of think that it's just a dream. You might wake up, but at the same time, your heart has sunk. Like it's sunk. You're upset, but at the same time, oh, this may be just maybe a bit of hope that this is just a bad dream. But you don't wake up, and then you start like reality starts to sink in. You're like, what have I done? What have I done? How did I end up here? Like, and for the first 2 years of my sentence, I was kind of in disbelief, and like I spent a lot of my time not being accountable for myself because I think like at that point in my life, I was at my lowest, and I kind of like turned to God or someone. Like every day I'd wake up and I'd pray, and before I went to bed, I'd pray too. And I was just looking for someone else to kind of like help me. And then halfway through my sentence, because I was expecting a light sentence for my charges, but mind you, I got charged for commercial supply. But I think what made me get a larger sentence was the fact that I was a habitual offender Like I got into crime when I've been charged for assault and affray when I was younger, and the previous firearm charge. Like the judge looked at me like, oh, this guy's just a criminal.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I got 4 years, I was kind of like very upset about that, and I lost faith in God for a bit, and I thought, well, the only person that's gonna pull me out of this is myself. So I have to start doing things to better myself. I have to like get more knowledge. I have to upskill, work on my body. I have to do things to improve who I am as a person, because when I get out of prison, I got nothing. I literally have nothing to my name. I didn't save up any money. I don't have any like hookups. I didn't stash any money anywhere. I don't have anyone to give me a leg up. The only person that I have to rely on is myself. So that's when I started, I'll just start training. The first thing I can do, the only thing I can do is start training. And then I'll get my white card, my forklift license while I'm in jail. I'll do whatever I can in jail just to get one leg up for when I do get out. I have something set up for myself. I've done everything that I've done in my power to best give me a chance to survive at life. And then from then on, like when I got out, it's just been level up here and there.
And you guys aren't,
and yeah,
you guys are really intelligent blokes. Like it might, based on your experiences and what you've been through, it might be easy to go on there. But you guys have both been through university and being raised with Asian parents, you had a lot of expectation on your shoulders to do well at university. So you were selling pills all through your time when you were studying. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So the whole time when I was studying, I was studying to be a primary school teacher, and I was selling pills at the beginning, and then I got into the heroin, and well, like the whole time, like all the money that I was making was feeding into the social life in university, because you're meeting a lot of people, a lot of social circles, 21st birthday, 22nd birthday, 23rd birthday, 18th birthday, whatever it is. It was just birthdays all year round, and all these different social groups that you were meeting in your classes, like you were just attending all of those. And I don't know how people survive in uni, but I realized that like I needed to make money to survive to attend all those things.
Yeah.
Andrew, I know it's a bit of a laugh, but what a primary school teacher you would have made, bro.
Well, you only did it right because it was like you thought it'd be easy. You'd enjoy the school holidays and all the breaks.
Yeah. Exactly. Honestly, I was actually lost with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and primary school teacher just seemed like the easy path in life. I go, okay, cool, I'll just cruise, and I wanted security and a job.
And so your mum was slaving away. She'd be going out to work before you woke up, coming home late at night, and your heart didn't just drop when you were arrested, but I think it really dropped when you saw the look on your mum's face when she had acknowledged that you had been arrested. And for a long period of time, a lot of your extended family overseas weren't even aware that you had been arrested because she kept it under wraps.
Yeah. Well, like, it's for her, it was like her only child, shame upon the family. And so I guess I understand why she tried to like keep it like hidden. And I understand, like, if I was in her position, I would have done the same thing too. And I guess like that first time that I saw her on visits, that was like the most heartbreaking moment I've had in my life, because the amount of disappointment and the amount of time that she's poured her life into bettering my life, I felt like I had like let her down more than anything. Like that was just that one moment. And I knew after that, like if I didn't start figuring out my life, that, like she would die a disappointed woman, and I couldn't let that happen.